Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy. Today we have on an awesome guest is somebody that fits really nicely with the purpose and intention of this podcast. His name is Scott Wilhite, and I'm going to let him tell you a lot more about what he does, but essentially he's a videographer, producer, cinematic producer, and has done a lot of things. So one of the questions he likes to ask people is, what if the things holding you back from a greater happiness were so simple you could make a few tweaks and immediately see positive change in your life? And what if they were so deceptively simple you've gone your whole life unaware? Those two questions, I've had this, he let me know of these questions a few weeks, it's been about a week, I think. I've been thinking about them, and honestly, I'm excited to see where this conversation goes, because I'm sure there's lots of things, even in how I do my business, my different things, that could really, they probably are so deceptively simple that I just don't know how to solve them. And I think this is my take on the questions before we get into the conversation. But my take on the questions is that's the main reason why I like to collaborate, why I like to talk to other people, and I'm very open. Like I learned a long time ago just to really drop the ego and not worry about what somebody else is going to judge me if I ask a stupid question or whatever. It's like, you're not going to learn unless you ask. And it doesn't matter how dumb you sound. You sound way more dumb if you're pretending you know something and then you can't fulfill on what you pretended you knew. So if you're scared of looking dumb, don't pretend to know something that you don't know. So that's where I'm at, and that's how I've kind of worked around these questions. But I always like to network and talk to people to find out what I don't know, and I'm super open to that. So Scott, he's an award-winning commercial filmographer. He's enjoyed it for multiple years, and he just loves doing this. And we're going to get into one of his future project of what he's working on now, and that's what I'm excited about. But go ahead, Scott. Let us know a little bit more about your past, just kind of your accolades and things, and then the transition that you're making in your business.
The transition. All right. Hey, Sam, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. I so appreciate that. And I'm excited about the topic that you have of helping people figure out their legacy and live a life of purpose and meaning. That's what I'm all about. That's what fuels me. And so I'm happy to help people who are looking for that, who are searching for how to live that kind of abundant mindset, if that makes sense for you. So let me tell you just a little bit about my story, and I'll tell it kind of in something that happened to me and my daughter a bunch of years ago. We were up in Oregon, just off the coast of Lincoln City, if you know where that is. And the kids, it was the day after the 4th of July, and we had two families together, is my family and my brother-in-law's family, and the little kids wanted to play in the ocean. And you know that game that you play where you run into the ocean and then you run back trying to chase the waves or have the waves chase you, and you're hoping to never get wet, and you always get wet?
Absolutely.
Well, the kids were playing that game, and of course I don't want to play that game because it's cold. Even though it's the day after the 4th of July. Up in Northern Oregon, it's really pretty cold. So I was watching them. They were small, and the waves were crashing in, and but they weren't getting too wet. It was okay. But somehow I got distracted. When I looked up. My daughter, who was I think about 10 at the time, and her counterpart cousin were being swept out to sea. And they're screaming and frantically throwing their hands in the air. And so I took off my jacket, my wallet, threw my phone on the ground, as well as any scout training that I had. I ran right for the water and jumped in. and they had been caught in this rip current, and it was sucking them out really quickly. And so I went and swam to the first kid that I could get to, which was her cousin, and got her and started swimming her back into shore. And, the whole time I'm looking out at my daughter, trying to see how far out she's going and how quickly I can get back out to her. I was amazed how powerful the water was, how powerful the churn was. And it zapped all of my strength. But I got her cousin into shore enough that she could then run up and get to safety. And as I turn around to then go get my daughter, I see my sister-in-law in the water. She had jumped in to save her daughter, and now she is caught in the churn. And she is being tossed around, and the waves are these crazy waves that are just pounding her and throwing her around. So I quickly swim out to her as quick as I can, and I get caught in that again too. And it's like, it hits us, and we're like rag dolls. We're head down, we're feet in the air, just gasping for air, doing what we can to just survive. And as I'm trying to push her into the shore with, every time we come up for a breath, I would just give her a shove, trying to get her closer into the shore. I'm not the strongest swimmer myself. And it's amazing how quickly you can give up hope. And I remember thinking, this is really going to spoil family vacations from here on out, because the three of us are going to die. I am certain the three of us are going down. And I remember I can barely breathe. Another wave hits me. I'm being tossed around, and I come up, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got one, maybe two more breaths, and then that's it. I'm done for. And right as I thought that, I looked down the shore, and there's my daughter that I was coming out to save. And she's actually standing up in the water, not too far away, but it's straight down the coast. And so I grabbed my sister-in-law, and with every break of the waves that are hitting us, I start pushing her down towards my daughter. And it doesn't take us too long, actually, to get out of this rip current, and to then we find this sandbar, which is what my daughter's standing on, and we're able to come up and get out of the waves and get out of this enormous pull that is hitting us. Now, here's what happened. See, I'm from the desert states, so I don't really know a lot about ocean currents and how that all works, but the kids were caught in what's called a rip current. And a rip current is this really powerful jet of water that shoots straight out from the shore. It can go for hundreds of feet, and it travels faster than an Olympic swimmer. And the kids and I got caught in that, and just the force of it is amazingly powerful. And people drown every year because they fight that, and it takes all of their strength away, and then eventually they've got nothing left and they drown. And what it is it's kind of like this invisible watery treadmill that you find yourself on, and you're just giving everything you have to go to the obvious way. The obvious solution to your problem is to get to shore, and you want to get to shore the fastest. Well, what had happened to my daughter is she had kind of given up as well, and she went to the only stroke that she really knew well, and that was the backstroke. And how anyone does the backstroke in the middle of these tumultuous waves that are just crashing on her, I have no idea. But she starts doing the backstroke, and in doing that, she gets turned around and starts swimming the wrong way, at least the wrong way in my mind. And she starts swimming down the shore. And as she does that, she's able to get out of this rip current, which is this treadmill. And that's what saved her, and that's what saved me and my sister-in-law. And that's kind of my why. That's why I do what I do. That's why I share what I share, because I think we all get caught in that churn of life where we're struggling. We're giving all of our energy towards trying to solve our problems. And the more we fight it, the more we strive, the more we struggle, the less energy we have, and the greater chance we have of going down. And that's what had been going on in my life. I had been living the dream, creatively. I was this commercial filmmaker. I was winning awards. I was doing what I wanted to do my whole life. But inside, I was so unsatisfied and so unhappy. And so I got caught in this churn of believing I just need more, or I need bigger, or I need better. And in getting caught on that treadmill, I mean, I just about lost everything there. I just about lost my family and my relationships. I did actually lose my job over it because I was so focused on trying to get this imaginary stuff that was just outside of my reach. And so for me, I've been fortunate in my life to have some really caring coaches and counselors and friends and mentors who have shown me that the way to go is actually the non-obvious way, to go this way when safety seems so clear to be right there. And so my why is helping people who are stuck in the struggle, who are fighting addictions or fighting financial trouble or relationship trouble, or they hate their job or they hate their life, or they're just so frustrated. And it's like the more that they feel stuck and trapped. And I want to help those people to just recognize that the non-obvious way to go is often more peaceful. It doesn't require as much energy, and it is actually the one that can get you to safety. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little bit of an understanding as to why I do what I do and how I learned about some of those secrets that had been eluding me my whole life.
Yeah, no, I love that. And for me, I can relate on a lot of different levels. One, I can see myself in that red current at different points in my life. And it's a great analogy to just really touch home. Everybody, I'm sure everybody's thinking, man, what's my red current that's going on in my life right now? What was it last week? What was it 2 months ago? What was it 10 minutes ago? Like what's going on? But I think what's interesting and why this is, I did not know that story from Scott, but I knew that I know where he's going, right? And so it only makes sense that his mission forward is in complete alignment with that story. And for me, it's proves even more. I'm just even more grateful that I had you on, because one of the missions of this podcast, Fuel Your Legacy, is to really identify what it is that what's really important to people, what's going to make the fighting worth it, number one, but also people, they're fighting the we'll call it rip current of life, thinking they're going towards the obvious, what everybody should want, what everybody around them wants, right? And they're ignoring what's inside of themselves, what direction they really should be going. And so the purpose of this podcast is how can we open somebody up, help them be receptive to a message of help you identify your identity and then have the confidence to take it, right? If you would have heard somebody yelling, swim the other way, you'd been like, what? No, I'm struggling, right? But the confidence came from when he saw his daughter over there. That's what gave him the confidence. He was about to give up, but the confidence of somebody else made it out alive, their safety, and it's the non-obvious direction and then he had the confidence to not only save himself, but his sister-in-law. And that's the key, is identify your identity, identify the direction, identify what you really want out of life, and then gain the confidence to do that. And you often do it through associations, often find that confidence by, once you identify what it is you want, going and seeking out other people who have achieved what you want to achieve. And then the next step is the action, is the creation and actually making it happen. And I know Scott from, and what I know of Scott was not that story, not the identity, not the confidence of why he's doing what he's doing, but I see his creation. I see what he's creating. I see the action. And that's what has me excited, is where he's going with this story and the shift in his passion. So yeah, thank you for sharing that story. I love it. So I'm curious, so if you were to, I mean, I don't know how to ask this. Is that the story that got you initially started thinking about legacy? Because now where you are, tell people where you're at right now as far as your video creation and helping people video their stories, and really tell us what was the story that made you think of that as what you wanted to do and move into?
Okay. Actually, before I get to that,
Oh, go for it.
let me tell you this story that got me into filmmaking, and that may put some perspective on all of this.
Okay.
So I remember I'm 8 years old. I'm sitting on my parents' green couch and I'm watching TV, and the most amazing TV commercial comes on. And it's this story about this boy about my age. He comes into his dad's home office, and his dad's punching away the 10 key, must be an accountant or something. And he comes up to his dad and he says, "Are we going camping, Dad?" "Oh, I'm sorry. I totally forgot about that. I'm so busy. We can't go." And the boy leans on him and says, "That's okay, Dad. I totally understand. But do you mind coming in the camper and looking and seeing what I did?" Yeah, sure." Finally, he pulls himself away and goes into the back of the camper, and he's looking around. He says, "Wow, son, you've done a fantastic job here." And the kid says, "Thanks." Slam. And he locks his dad in the back of the camper. The next shot, you see them driving away. He's kidnapped his dad for a fishing trip. I remember sitting on that couch and getting so excited because my dad was working all the time and I wanted to do something like that. And so I ran downstairs into the basement. My dad was a solopreneur architect. And so I run down and I'm looking through the doorknob hole to watch him, and he'd never finished the basement. So there's this big gaping hole where the doorknob should be. And I'm watching him, and he's behind his big drafting table, and he's there working, and I'm just giggling to myself, just imagining me and him fishing somewhere, and I've kidnapped him, and I even imagined me driving the car and doing all this stuff as a little kid. But as I look through, it doesn't look like TV. My dad's there behind his big drafting table, and he has his head in his hands, and he looks tired, and he looks worn out, and he looks completely beat. And I stood up, and I'm just kind of trying to make sense of this. This isn't like TV. And I look around, and I'm standing on just bare concrete. And around me is mostly 2x4 studded walls with a little bit of drywall. He'd never finished the basement. In fact, there are wires hanging where only a few lights had really been installed and not properly because we hadn't finished it, because he never seemed to have extra. In fact, we never seemed to have enough. And so it was always not just paycheck to paycheck, but just when a client would pay. And it was always a struggle. And I remember that as I stood there and just kind of processed all of this, I remember this thought came into my head that said, "Scott, you were so selfish that you would jeopardize your family's financial security for a fishing trip, for a frivolous fishing trip with your dad." And I felt absolutely horrible. It was like this wave of guilt and shame that just washed over me. And I went upstairs just feeling horrible about myself. And I sat on the green couch and thought about it, and the TV was still on. And then I remembered that TV commercial. And then I had the world's second greatest idea. I was going to grow up and I was going to create films and commercials and videos and stories that were going to be just like that. They were going to make people feel great, and they were going to inspire people, and they were going to build families and save marriages and give hope and all this great stuff. And that's when I decided to be a filmmaker. Now, if you fast forward 30 plus years, I'm living the dream. I'm doing those kinds of things. I'm doing fundraising films that raise scholarships for kids. I am creating films that bring fresh water to people in impoverished countries. We're raising money for wheelchairs for people that are handicapped and immobile. And all of these things should be making me feel great, but it's not. And I'm embarrassed about it. I'm ashamed to tell anybody that I feel so horrible inside and that I am struggling. And so I'm sure what I need is more or better or something different, or, maybe I need more exposure. Maybe more people need to see my films. And this is when I'm caught in that churn. That was my rip current, was being caught in this belief that I needed to earn my way out of guilt and shame, that I needed to earn my value in the world. And it wasn't until I got a coach that pointed out to me kind of my origin story was based on bad math. That, I believed that I had to earn my way out of guilt and shame, that I had to earn my worth in the world, that I had to become lovable. I had to become worthy and worthwhile. And in having that bad math, everything that I created on top of it, that if I do these films, if I, all these things, that would somehow change my life, and that would change my worth, and that would make me feel good again. And even though I was doing those kinds of films that would do it, it didn't, because the math was bad. And I hope that's making sense to you, but it's kind of like if you were doing this really long math problem and the very beginning foundational stuff was 2 + 2 = 6, but then you then perpetuate that wrong math throughout the whole story, the whole rest of your addition is just going to screw everything up. And that's what I had. I had a story problem because I kept telling myself this story over and over and over again. So the fortunate thing that happened to me is that I had people that pulled me out, that showed me, the non-obvious way to get out. And in doing that, it saved me, and it saved my marriage, and it saved my family. And now it's my opportunity to give back and to help other people who may be caught in that churn and may be struggling, and help them figure out, a better way to do that. Does that make sense as kind of a background story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I love that. So it's because the next place to go is, once you make that decision, I know a lot of kids who make a decision that they want to do something, and then generally, and this is sad, but generally by the time they're mid-teens or even younger teens, they've been sold by others out of their dream. They've had so many naysayers place so much doubt into their mind that they couldn't be what they thought they wanted to be. And so then they choose again to do something in life that's not really fulfilling for them, not really even in the same industry that they really wanted to be in, just because they're living somebody else's dream. They're fighting somebody else's rip current. They're on somebody else's treadmill. And so how did you deal with, one, was there naysayers who were saying, oh, the film industry, there's no money in it, you're going to struggle? I know I've heard that from other people. So I'm just curious, what were your naysayers? Who were they? What did they say to you? How did you overcome them? And then how did you overcome the biggest naysayer, which is obviously yourself?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I had a real struggle to get into the field that I'm in. And I started out because advertising was where I wanted to go. I wanted to create commercials like that. And so I jumped into college. I knew what I wanted to study. I knew what I wanted to do, and and getting that first job was so hard. I'm knocking on door after door after door, and they're not letting me in. And then when I did get in the ad agency world, it's really fickle. If the economy dips down or if they lose a client, they just let people go. And I ended up getting let go over and over and over again, which then took me kind of all over the U.S. We lived here. We lived in Utah. We lived in Indianapolis. We lived in Oklahoma, and just kept getting let go. And I kept working harder and harder to become indispensable, to become more talented in what I did, because I wanted job security. And and then eventually I got to the point, where I'm trying to feel good about myself, and it's not working. And so I think, well, I need to be better at the craft. And so I would do routines in the morning where I would run on the treadmill, and I would watch a movie that I'd never seen before, and I would pay attention to camera angles and how they treat certain characters. And I would recognize how you knew what the story was without even listening to it, or who was an important character, or who was going to betray somebody just by body language and things. And so I trained myself to get really good at that, because and it was all out of self-preservation, really, that I'm trying to feel good about myself, and I'm winning these awards because my films are making a certain mark, and yet it's not satisfying. And, I'm stuck in that churn. And kind of fortunate for me was that when I found out that my whole life was built on bad math, and that I was able to very quickly get satisfaction and self-worth that I had really never had throughout my life. When I got that, I felt peace and I felt calm. And then I thought, well, now what? I mean, this is this thing that I have been desperately seeking for that is just always out of reach. And now I have it. Well, now what? Well, kind of the fortunate thing, and I think this works for most all of us, is that there is this great plan that works out in our lives with the universe bringing great things together for us, that we still have opportunities. And so I looked at the talents that I had and I thought, well, okay, I can actually use them in this way and make a difference. And this time I'm not trying to make a difference for me, but I'm truly seeking to empower other people to make a difference in their life. And so I think people that have maybe stepped away from their dream, or they've been, they've been scared to live that thing that is deep inside them, if they still feel that emptiness, if they feel that yearning, if they feel that hole, and that's that thing that I kept feeling, that there was no way I could fill it. There was no way I could find satisfaction. If they're still feeling that, it means there's still hope. It means they can do something. It means that when they get into alignment with their purpose, with their why, with what just drives their soul and lights them up, then I think they can find that satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I want to kind of point out to the listeners right now is one very specific thing that you said, and I love it because I think more people need to do it. It's what I do a lot when I'm working with my clients, and they're like, man, we just need X amount of dollars more in our income, or I'd love to earn a little bit more income. There's a mutual friend of ours, Bart Merrill. He was on the podcast a few weeks ago. But the idea of monetizing your mindset, so many people, they think, oh, I have this skill and my skill is good for this one thing. I'm serviceable or I'm marketable in this one type of industry. And I think true genius comes from innovation. When it's interesting, the clock is such a good example of this, but it happens in everything. But when you think about who created a clock, right? Somebody had to create the idea of some form of power, so battery something, or some way that it would keep going. Somebody had to create the idea of little needles to define where it's going, right? So they took all of these little different parts that were already around in the world, and they compiled all these different parts into what we now know as a clock or a watch. They're like, oh, well, I see this clock on the wall, or a sundial. How do I get one of those things on my wrist? Okay, so now we're going to implement a bracelet and a timepiece, and now we have, so it's all this innovation. We're taking stuff that already exists from two completely separate industries, or seemingly different places, and we're combining them and creating something magical. And I'm confident, and this is what I'm confident in, kind of my message. Once you identify your identity, your purpose, what you truly feel in alignment with, that skill, whatever it is, whether it's talking to people, whether it's loving people, whether it's going out and doing service, whether it's being an actor, actress, singer, techie, whatever, right? Once you identify that skill and you can identify with what you want to accomplish in the world, take that skill and you can create income because it's adding value in a way that nobody else in the world can add value, really, because nobody else is you with your skill set. And it's just such an interesting thing. So I love that you were able to recognize that I actually have all this training now. Now, how can I put all of this training into a career of alignment and meaning with who I am, rather than chasing this income or chasing these accolades? That's not really what was important to you in the end. You thought it would fulfill, but it never fulfilled because it wasn't really in alignment with who you were. And I love that. More people need to understand that.
Now, you keep using the word alignment, and I absolutely love that, because I think that's what happens to so many of us that feel awful and feel that something's off, is that we're not in alignment with who we are, with our identity, or with our purpose, or our why, what it is that really lights us up. And instead we're doing something that's off. And when we're out of alignment like that, I think it affects our health. I think it affects our our ability to cope with things, our ability to manage things. I think, we spiral down because of that. But when we are, like you mentioned, in alignment, when those things are clicking in place, when we know who we are, when we know why we're here, when we're making progress. There was this really cool study. I think it's called the Harvard Progress Principle. You can Google it and look it up. They found that the people that were most innovative, the people that were most successful and the most creative were people who made consistent progress in meaningful work. And the cool thing about that is we get to determine what's meaningful. You know, what's meaningful to you, Sam, is different from what's meaningful to me. But if we are making progress, if we've identified what's meaningful to us, and then we are making progress there, then we're in alignment with who we are and why we're here and what we're about. And then we feel that peace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then I think at that point as well, you're truly able to collaborate without feeling like you have to do everything, or two, somebody else, like, it's often that people think there's a scarcity mentality. They think, oh, there's too many of this certain person or certain career field. But that once you understand that you're there to contribute a very specific thing that's who you are, then the scarcity is gone, because now it's like there's nobody else. Like, there's no other Scott Wilhite out there. There's nobody else out there. There's a lot of people who have videographer skills. There's a lot of people who probably have this idea of helping people get out of the rib current. I know there are. I work with lots of coaches, right? But there's nobody out there who has this, who wants to accomplish it with their video skills and help other people tell their story, right? So it's like there's nobody else out there that is Scott. And just like there's no other Samuel out there, there's plenty of people who work in finance, but there's nobody else out there that's me. And so there's no scarcity mindset of like, oh, somebody's going to steal business from me. It's like, no. The people who want to work with Samuel, they will work with Samuel. The people who want to work with Scott, they'll work with Scott. And everybody else, they can go have a nice day, right? We don't need everybody. We need the people who are sold out on who we are and can see the vision in what we do and feel like that's part of their alignment as well. And I love that. So if you were to sum up kind of your experiences into either one or two habits, mindsets, or behaviors, like something that you feel like this is the kind of your secret weapon to success, what would that be? And then how could we take steps to adopt that into our lives to help us receive more alignment or fulfillment in our lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So happy to share this. And I'm so happy to share it because it's something that was given to me by mentors and coaches who, and I don't know where they got it from, but I'm happy to pass it around so that whoever's listening, that you may be struggling, maybe these things will help you out. The two things that changed me the most is, first of all, having a consistent morning routine. And the other thing is journaling. I'll touch on journaling first. So the very first thing that happened was that, like, I lost my job actually because I was so in my own head. I was so frustrated and struggling with, trying to live, trying to satisfy my life with this thing that couldn't be satisfied. And right at that time, I ran into a guy who gave me a book about positive psychology. And in there, I started reading all the research. And one of the things that came up over and over and over again was this idea of gratitude. And I was like, gratitude? What's that about? Well, one of the researchers had commented that you can't be grateful and unhappy at the same time. And I thought, is that true? Is that really true? And if it is, well, I'm really unhappy right now. So if I get grateful, will that then make me happy? And I had been reading all of these things that they would do to kind of, they'd put these social experiments on people where they would write a letter of gratitude to somebody, or they would do something, to show appreciation. Anyway, one of the things that they mentioned is that if you kept a journal, a gratitude journal, and each day wrote down like 3 or 5 fortunate things that happened to you that day, that it would change your life. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try the experiment. And I committed to myself that I wouldn't go to bed until I had written in my gratitude journal 3 fortunate things that happened to me. And I did pretty good for about a week. And then I remember one night I was so tired and I'm dragging myself up to bed and I had had a horrible day and I was just in my own head and I was angry and frustrated. And then I remembered my journal and I remembered that I'd made that commitment to myself. And I couldn't think of one good, fortunate thing that happened that day, let alone three. And I'm tired and I'm frustrated and I want to take this journal and just throw it against the wall. And I can't remember if I even came up with something that night, but I remember the next day I was driving down the canyon, and where I lived, they had it would get kind of narrow and you would be in just kind of one lane each way for, I don't know, 10 miles or something like that. And if you got behind somebody that was slow, you were behind them forever. And I remember I'm driving down and I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to wait until the end of the day to write these three fortunate things. I'm going to look for them throughout the day. But then as I'm thinking that, I get up to this guy and it's right where it goes into these one lanes and he is going so slow. I'm just going, oh my gosh. And I'm starting to lose it again. And then we come to a corner and he pulls off on the side of the road. And I'm going, here's my opportunity. So I fly on past him. And I'm thinking, oh, yes, I did that. I got the opportunity. And then I look in my rear view mirror and I see him get back on the road. And I realized that he had deliberately pulled off so that I could pass. And what gratitude is it's recognizing you are the recipient of deliberate kindness. And I remember looking in that rear view mirror and realizing this guy who knows nothing about me has just given me an opportunity that I needed, but he didn't know I needed it. And just all of a sudden I started to feel something. And it was those feelings of gratitude and it was feelings of happiness that I had not felt in years because I was so angry and frustrated. So, if I gave two habits, one would be to have a consistent morning routine. The other would be to have a nightly routine where you write in a gratitude journal or you do some sort of journaling that helps you clear things from your mind. And as far as the morning routine, I mean, it could be a number of different things, but basically you just start intentionally. You don't start by looking at your smartphone and suddenly doing somebody else's to-do list or letting your other people be in charge of your mindset or your attitude or how you're feeling that day, but you actually take that internally. And so those are the two things that I've found to be most helpful.
Yeah, I love that. The gratitude, I think that for me, I knew about the gratitude thing, but I didn't really get to the point where I could be grateful consistently. One was journaling. I've done my best. After my first child, I journaled like 12 times in the whole next year. And it was terrible. So this year I actually recommitted to journal daily. And so far this year, I haven't missed even one day. So I'm 3/4 of the way through and I haven't missed a day of journaling. So
That's awesome. It makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, man, I love it. I had journaled. So it was nice because journaling, this is not just for gratitude, but if you read my journals, they're full of gratitude. But I had consistent journals, like if not daily, at least weekly, since I was probably 16 years old or even a little bit less. And so it was nice when I was dating my wife. It wasn't like telling you a bunch of stories about my life. I literally gave her 4 or 5 of my journals and I was like, this is me, And what's cool, but I mean, there's a lot of things, but that was like all my deepest, darkest secrets, my fears, all of my things that I am not like, I don't want anybody to know about me. I'm not proud of. I wouldn't necessarily talk about them out in the open. I have to talk one-on-one. I'm pretty much good to share with whatever, but like it was everything. And being able to pass that over to her, our dating period was pretty short, but if you could imagine reading 4 volumes of somebody's life day by day, their thought processes, their struggle, their ups and their downs, and all of that. Think of how well, like Harry Potter, I think is the most, I've never read the books and I've only watched some of the movies and I don't really connect with the characters, but regardless of that, millions of people across the world, they know Harry Potter better than they know their brother probably. They know what he likes to eat. They know his sense of humor. They know the type of interactions he had. I mean, they know him so well because they read about him. They read about his interactions. They read about the different characters. And the feelings about different stuff. They heard the dialogue. And I was able to give that to my wife before we got married, right? My girlfriend, almost fiance, and say, this is who I am. And honestly, I'm not perfect, and nor do I believe anybody is, but it did help her accept some of my faults a lot easier, because she's like, okay, I've seen this since he was a child. He's been struggling with this, this, and this. This is how he's consistently dealt with it. This is how he's reframed every time he has this problem. He reframes, and this is his thought process. And it's all journaled there. So now she knows exactly what to expect in a long-term relationship, which was really nice. So I think journaling, I can't think of a better thing when you're going towards becoming grateful than, and I just do this just because therapy that I went through, but like write down what is, like as close to factually as you can do, what actually happened, and then write down how you feel about it, get all your negative feelings out, or however you want to feel about it, and then immediately after, write down everything you're grateful for or you learned from the experience. And so that's like the process of a lot of my journals. It starts out like, well, this is the factual stuff that happened today. This is how I feel about it. Man, I'm so grateful for my wife, my kids, my house, my things that like really why I live life and what are meaningful to me. And I'm just grateful for them.
Yeah. Oh, it's so amazing how it empowers you, because, we get this stuff out and we get it on paper, and you start to really understand what makes you tick and what story you're telling in your own head. I mean, those stories that I had told myself over and over again, they were subconscious. And in fact, I had forgotten that part about going down into the basement. I remembered when I decided to become a filmmaker, but I had forgotten about what happened after the commercial and what I had done. And those repressed memories came out when I started journaling. So yeah, if you're listening and you're thinking, what can I do to change and transform my life? Start journaling.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. So I want you to give a good, as close as you can, right, description of like what you're doing with people's stories and how you're helping them bring them to life from a legacy perspective.
Okay. I'm working on the coolest project right now that just absolutely lights me up, and that is telling personal stories. My big moonshot goal with this is that I would love to create a library of films, of stories that are people's life lessons. TED Talks, right? And you probably love TED Talks and listening to those. And those are all these ideas that are worth spreading, is kind of their tagline. And people talk about them and they share what they know. But wouldn't it be cool to actually watch somebody's story or watch their life lesson, 3 to 5 minutes, and we're able to capture or to, get that essence of what made them who they are. What were the big pivots in their life? What was the big aha moment that has transformed them into being a successful leader like they are? And so I'm working right now on preserving those, on capturing those life lessons and putting them in to kind of Hollywood style short film as a format, so that we would have this library and we could pull from just the best. I think stories give us the framework for living. And so when we get good stories that give good examples, then they help us out in all of our choices.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I love that there's this trend on Netflix and Amazon. There's a lot of like based on true story movies coming out. And I don't care what it's about. Some of them are really weird. Some of them are really super dark. Some of them are light and happy and fun. Some of them are pretty boring. I mean, there's a wide range of based on true story stuff on Amazon and Netflix. But I love, like, I don't care what it is. I watch all of them just going like, this is somebody's life. This is crazy that like, I can't imagine putting my life into a video. I've thought about it multiple times, and I think it would be just the most interesting film or series of films to really like create a life, I mean, a video series of my life. But I think something like that, or parables, Bible parables, where they just have these short videos of meaningful stories. Well, it's great when it's these fictional, and I call the parables fictional because I think they all are, right? They're great stories that teach a moral and a point and have an end. But like, what if those were real life stories? So it's even more inspirational because you're like, oh, that person, I've heard of him. I know that happened. That's awesome, right? That's even more impactful for me than just watching a parable of like, here's a story of how ideally people should act. That's great. But then there's like, that person actually did that. That's way cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned parables. If you say 2 words, suddenly it gives you this entire story. You say Good Samaritan, and suddenly in your mind is the entire story. And yet it's this short story that sticks with you. You know, that's what I think we have the power of with film and with story to do right now, and to tell true stories and life lesson stories. And I'm just so excited to be able to get this whole library together so that we can have more lessons like that. They're not a preachy kind of thing, but it's just we learn by experience and by observation. And if you tell a story right, then the viewer gets to be the character, and they get to see the choices, and they get to make the choices in their mind before they're even made, and they're a part of that. And then hopefully that helps them with their life choices that they're doing. So yeah, I think the possibilities are out there for some fantastic stuff, and I'm excited to see how it all clicks together.
Yeah, no, I love it, because one of my long-term goals when it comes to legacy creation, and part of the Fuel Your Legacy vision, and I don't know how soon this will happen necessarily, but it's exactly part of that, preserving the story in a way that's leaving a legacy and making sure that can be transferred easily to grandchildren. In the past, we had storytellers, and there's whole conventions now, storytellers, and that's how they transferred information, but it was just a story. So you're playing a game of telephone throughout the generations. What's cool is now in life, we can record little snippets of our day. We can record little things of like what we're thinking, how we're feeling pain. I had one client who he knew he was going to be successful. He just knew he was. So one day he was, when he was just living out of his car, he was turning bottles in at Walmart for recycling so he could get some money. And he like recorded on his phone, hey, this is the date. This is what I'm doing right now. One day when I'm successful, I'm going to post this on social media somewhere, but this is my life right now, right? He had the foresight 4 years earlier, knowing like, I want to be able to post this because I'm going to be successful, and there's zero doubt in my mind. And he posted it just like 2 or 3 months ago. And I love it because it's just like, yes, like we need more of those authentic, not like, hey, I just made this last night and made it seem like I made it a few years ago, but like, this is timestamp dated, phone image, this is really where it is, but I know that I'm going somewhere. And then for him to be where he said he was going to be is inspiring.
Yeah. I call that the Roger Bannister principle. Do you know who Roger Bannister was?
I only know him by name. I don't actually know who he is.
Yeah. He was the guy, he was the first one to break the 4-minute mile.
Okay. Yeah.
And before him, all these doctors, all these scientists said the human body cannot break 4 minutes for the mile. It just can't move that fast. It's not physically possible. And that was the barrier. Nobody believed it could happen, but he was sure he could do it. And he kept working, and he finally broke the 4-minute mile, which was amazing. But what was more amazing about that was it was only 5 weeks later that it was broken again. And then again, and then again, and then again. And it just had to be broken that one time for everybody to see it's possible. And now you've got high school students that are breaking that barrier. But it's understanding and seeing from other people's stories or hearing their experiences, it's possible. I'm possible. And I think that's the power of storytelling.
I love it. That should be your new tagline. I'm possible. That's powerful. I love that. So how can we support you if we wanted our stories told? How can we get in touch with you? Where do we go? How do we engage with you and what you're doing?
Okay. The best place to find me is at businessscott.com. kind of a fun, fun site where you can interact with me. You can learn a little bit more about what I'm doing. You can watch some of my films if you want. You can reach out to me if that's something that you want to do. But businessscott.com is what that is. And I kind of like that. I got to give just a little secret about the website away to you. Yes, I'm about business, because of the things that I do, with marketing and with filmmaking and things like that. But also, that Charles Dickens story, A Christmas Carol.
Uh-huh.
There's a part where what is it? Jacob Marley comes back to haunt him, and he's lamenting about missed opportunities, and Scrooge says, "But you were always a good man of business." And he says, he cries out, "Mankind was my business." So that's what it is too. You'll also find a lot of resources there from the life lessons that I've learned that hopefully can help you too. So businessscott.com is where you'll find it.
Awesome. And we're going to have some of those links here in the show notes. So we're now to the Legacy on Rapid Fire part of the show. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions looking for 1 word to 1 sentence answers. And we're going to move through this pretty fast, and then we'll ask the final question.
Okay.
So the first question is, what do you think is holding you back from you reaching the next level in your legacy?
Myself.
Okay.
That's
and
my
what do you
mindset.
believe the hardest thing you've ever done is?
Believe.
And what do you believe the greatest success to this point in your life has been?
Marrying my wife.
There you go. Amen. I don't know your wife, but I know my wife, and I think it's a great
I married way up. That's the best thing I ever did.
Okay, what would you say one of your secrets? So, what's one of your secrets you believe contributes the most to your success?
Journaling.
Journaling. Okay, and what's 1 or 2 books that you'd recommend to the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
Oh, Man's Search for Meaning was one of the ones that totally changed me. Check that out. This is Viktor Frankl, and one of the things he said in there is that we all have a purpose, we all have a mission, a life's work to do that only we can do. And the people that survived the Nazi concentration camp, which is where he was at before he wrote the book, were those that had purpose in their life. They had something to live for. So absolutely check that one out. Another book that comes to my mind is Sean Aker wrote a book called The Happiness Principle. And that was the first one that I read that helped me understand I could be in the driver's seat of my life. I don't have to be a victim anymore. I don't have to just live by default, but there are certain things I could do to be deliberate and intentional and live the kind of life that I want.
Awesome. No, both great books. I've read both of them. Viktor Frankl's, that one has, for the last 4 people who have said, I've asked this question too, in the registration form, every one of them has put it on there. So it's and then 2 of them put 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So these are good books. I will say, and this is my testimonial for Viktor Frankl's book. When you read the book, I know this sounds absolutely insane, but when I read the book, because of the transformation that he was able to make and where he was able to keep his mind, when you're reading the book, I almost wish that I could be with him there experiencing what he experienced, like going through the crap with him, because it doesn't sound that bad the way he frames it in this book. But like, we know it was bad, and he's saying it was bad, but because of the purpose and the belief that he had about what he was meant for, he was able to bear it. And I love that. Like, if there's ever, like, probably the most positive book about the Holocaust ever written, and then how as individuals we can just overcome such horrendous things in our lives, and it will pass and we'll move on, and we can when we're focused on and in alignment with our identity, and we're really focused on purpose and helping others, then we'll be able to survive everything. So I love that. So here's the final question.
Okay.
We're going to pretend now, Scott, that you've died. Okay. And we're sitting around the dinner table with your great grandchildren. So 6 generations away. What do you want them to be saying about your legacy?
There's a song that I'm kind of blanking on right now, but it's basically, it's this song about America. I think it's Nora Jones that sings it. Actually, I may be wrong on that. But it's basically about that I gave my best to you. Is the words in the chorus. America, America, I gave my best to you. When all is said and done about my life, I hope my kids and my grandkids and those that have been affected by me feel that I went as far as I could go. I stretched as hard as I could for other people to be able to help them get over their roadblocks and their barriers and the trouble going on in their life. And I just hope that giving spirit is what comes across as my epitaph, whatever.
Awesome. Cool. I love it. It's a great legacy. I love what you're doing. And probably in the future, as you pick up more steam, I may have you back on, because I just love the whole mission of what you're doing. It's always exciting to me. So thank you so much. And yeah, any last words for the Fuel Your Legacy audience?
You know, Sam, I'm just honored that you would have me on, and I'm really glad that you're putting this out for other people. So often we live by default, and we get stuck in these fail patterns. You know, we're stuck on those watery treadmills, and your ideas and bringing people together to talk about these and to bring this out into the public consciousness, to bring this out into conversation, to get people chatting and thinking and considering. Oh, I just honor you for doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I love it as well. So with that, we are going to sign out for today. But next week, we have some incredible things. And then moving up into the future, we have some events. I'm going to just foreshadow some of those events really quick. In October, we've got October 18th and 19th. We have the Strengthen Your World seminar workshop up in Sandy High House. If you would like access to that or want some discounted tickets, I have some discounts for those of you who would like that. So the phone number to text in is 385-263-7699, and just text SYW to that number, and we'll get you some discount tickets to Strengthen Your World workshop. Super looking forward to that. I'll be speaking there, and then I'm going to get to speak with a bunch of other incredible speakers as well. So thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.